kind of like a laboratory rat. You're put in this box, and you're sort of running in your own place, and then they put off one gate, and you run to the next. So everything, in a sense, in your day starts to become insignificant because you really feel the reality of, how your life is controlled. It's just a matter of somebody just deciding to close the door. So you get a sense of, I don't know, for lack of better terms, a sense of one's worth or scale, in a sense, as far as whoever decides to close or open that door. We're rats. Little box closing the door. Imagine yourself in your house, and then somebody decides to lock the door. So it's a little bit more straightforward, but it's kind of like this on and off switch whereby I can choose to believe that for now this person doesn't exist. Are all these walls there? Well, these walls are to protect you because you're surrounded by, I don't know, animals or something. I could tell you to stand in front of a wall for 24 hours. But, at least when the clock stops after 24 hours, there's an exit, so you're feeling inside, I could even tell you 3 years. Yeah. So if you have enough sort of strength within yourself, you will maintain some momentum, some hope, some courage, some endurance.
Sure.
As long as it gives you a time. Here the time factor is part of the game, or the lack thereof.
Right.
And it's a process whereby when you have one string to pull on one person, right, you give yourself a chance to have 10 strings.
Yeah.
You create those strings.
2-step front. Move to the left. Quicker. Stop. More passionate. Move to the right. Quicker. Stop. More passionate. Don't play around with this. More passionate! Read.
I was born underwater. I've never experienced standing on 2 feet. Still, I believe my dreams to be so powerful that it wouldn't make a difference. Even if you kept reminding me on and on, I would keep smiling, telling you I've never been as happy as in this very moment, which is because of the time we spent and the constant warmth I receive when touching you. I really love to lie down, look at the sky, and believe the lies I tell myself.
Change.
Chapter 5. He said he commissioned work. It was his work, from his funding. He made the dance. My poems were only schematics for the choreography. My drawings, the influence. He took 50 poems, about 35 sketches, in an A3 art journal that had my tears between its pages. I was silenced, I think, not because I had nothing to say, but because a 6'2" man who had the god of dance in him made me think he was half right. And there in that impasse, I had yielded to him while he packed my words and my imagination in a box. We even hugged goodbye. When he rang me to say that he'd accidentally left the box in a bus stop near Sydney Uni, I felt nothing, as though I had been here before, given in, like being dispossessed was something I was used to at a deep cellular level, a deep nostalgia for giving in. Then it shifted. Have it, I thought, have it. What I have is endless. What I have can't be lost. He had nothing but conquest, no inspiration, just an insatiable need to take. Chapter 2. The Filipino exists in a curious space between the positions of history, and her placement in the Pacific Ocean and the Asian continent, shaped by early influences of Indo-Malay and various Austronesian settlements. She later evolved into a corporeal hybrid that bent under the cloistered austerity of Spanish colonization. In the beginning of the 20th century, she had become a tropical American, embracing modernity with voracious appetite, yet strangely haunted by the lingering heaviness of her past Iberian masters. Post-Japanese invasion, independence, dictatorship, a coup, and countless ineffective governments, the Filipino body had learned to adapt through economic diaspora, or a stubborn existence that's precariously balanced above the most volatile intersection of extreme weather patterns and shifting tectonic plates.
Pascal asks, in Indonesia, after a show, they often do a discussion about the work. What is the word that they use? Diskusi? How did you and your teacher have this discussion over years of learning and exchange? What was discussed?
Is it possible to repatriate embodied knowledges?
How long did it take for that particular cultural material to sit comfortably in your body? Is there a particular vocabulary, gesture, movement that takes you straight into that embodiment or immersion?
Which bodies are authorized to carry what cultural knowledges? Who holds the power to decide?
how does cultural material turn into a canon? And is it allowed to be interpreted in a radical way if it is connected to a deep cultural position?
How is it possible to develop critical practice as an Indigenous First Australian under the benevolent gaze of the guilt-avoiding cultural consumer audience?
What is the difference between piracy and appropriation?
What is the potential of cultural piracy through acts of cultural embodiment, such as in the works of Filipina performance artist Carolina Garcia, for reclaiming agency by reversing the colonial gaze?
Well, it was right after trauma. Our house burned down, and so that's what happened. My body went into shock, and from the shock, it exposed the genetics for the disease, for the syndrome. So, I was going through deep grief about losing everything that was my childhood home.
So your house burned down?
Yes, our house. We got out. Of course, no one died in it, but it was, I can still remember looking back behind me, and the flames were coming into our bedroom, and my parents were getting us out the window of the house, kind of thing. So that was happening. And then, of course, my parents, who were, 24, 25 years old with 3 boys, lost everything. And so, in terms of attachment theory, I kind of lost my mother at that point. She became really depressed and a lot of grief going on. So I also remember kind of losing the presence of my mother's attachment and her being in life, because there was so much death around us. And then probably about a week later, my body started twitching. So there was so much going on in the grief of what I knew, the grief in my relationship with parent, and then my body. And so I wrote about it years ago, and there was nowhere I felt safe, because the outside world was disorganized and the inside world was really disorganized. So I didn't know where to go in my body, outside or inside. And then they kept me out of school because they didn't know what was going on. And then once I got back to school, then the kind of teasing happened, because, what's going on with this kid? And so, from that moment on, it was a lot of, bullying and teasing and making fun of me and that kind of stuff. So I didn't kind of know where to hide in some ways, and I felt like I wanted to just hide. And I don't know. Although I had, friends who still, my life was still my life. I was just this kid who had this thing. So that was really kind of, when it started, that's how I felt. And not too long ago, I was looking at, my brother had made a video of our home movies, because some of the stuff was saved, so to speak. And everything before that, you watch the movies and I'm playful, and then after that, I'm hardly in the movies at all. So I'm just gone. Yeah.
So I became kind of a lost kid in some ways, you know. So, and then, you know, from then on, it was just, you know, my mother became a bully because she thought it was a habit and she thought I was making it happen. So she would antagonize me, and she was not very nice about it. My brother, who started the fire, and I didn't know this until much years later, he was really pretty mean to me, but, you know, I was a daily reminder of what he did, you know, because it was, I was the trauma in the room. And so, you know, there was nowhere, except, you know, my grandmother was very kind, my father was very kind, but there was nowhere I wasn't going anywhere that, like, let me be who I was. It was almost like the gay thing. It's like, you're not okay, you know, in this family kind of thing. So I was not okay in the family. You know, there was nowhere to feel safe with this thing that was now in my body. So, you know, thus really kind of, you know, many years. And so, you know, we would go to doctors, and doctors would say, oh, it's just a childhood thing, it's going to go away, blah, 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 blah. I knew it wasn't. I knew this was not a habit.
You knew it?
I knew it wasn't a habit.
Okay.
I just felt it because I couldn't control it. It was like, it was something was happening to me. And then so fast forward, and I'm in college, and I'm taking the train, and some guy gets on. He's a businessman. He's got a, you know, he's all suited up, and he's got a briefcase, and he's swearing, fuck, goddamn whore, to his cassette. And I looked at him and I was like, there's something felt really familiar. Although I don't swear and have that part, something felt familiar. And I was like, ooh, you know, what's this about? And then not too long after that, The Reader, which is, I don't know if you remember The Reader here in Chicago, but it's like kind of a weekly magazine. The front story was about Tourette syndrome. And I picked it up and I was like, holy shit, I've got this. So I went to the college clinic.
But that was like maybe 6, 7, 8 years later. Or
well, I was 9, so like 10 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or even, because I was probably 20, 19, 20.
Okay.
And so I went to the clinic at the college, and I walked in, and the doctor said, "You have Tourette syndrome," and I just cried. You know. Because it was the first time someone told me what it was. So it finally validated it. So, thus the grief after that, and just the work I had to do then, just because acceptance is the way out, you know. So.
I took a cab from the Mayflower across the river, past the wharfs and their celebrated restaurants, through housing developments that recall the social conscience of the 30s, up the long hill to St. Elizabeth's. This hospital is enormous, a village on top of a hill, away from the city, and our street passed through the center of its grounds. Walls separated it from us on both sides, and at the main entrance, a uniformed guard stopped us. When my cab brought me at last to the central building, I thought at first that the 3-story structure looked much like any overgrown administration building on any Midwestern campus. It was red brick with weathered limestone trim and a portico. The grounds reminded me of college campuses, for I saw winding walks, trees and shrubbery, lawns and ill-assorted structures of many official, no funny business styles. But the persons who were about, sauntering in the sun, sitting on benches, talking, were too old and too strange to be students. For all its superficial similarity, this was no university. These people lived in a world apart. Clearly, they and I did not live by the same laws. The clerk in the front office behind her fence had never irritably heard of Mr. Pound, and she had to check in the file in another room before she located his whereabouts. Then, after conferring with another girl, this one without lipstick or curl in her hair, she sent me down the winding street beside a large pond to Old Centre Hall. I passed a commissary, which seemed closed. At last, I came to the back door of Old Centre Hall, and entering, I found myself in an institutional corridor. The floor was covered with brown battleship linoleum. The walls were lined with benches on which visitors waited for their inmate brothers and fathers and friends. The corridor was wide, generously wide, but it was low, its ceiling covered with the pressed tin coffering so popular 2 generations ago. But even here, I didn't find Mr. Pound. I was told at yet another office, this time by a man of 40, dressed in a white coat, that Mr. Pound was in detention ward Chestnut on the 2nd floor of the North Wing. He gave me information only after he had seen my invitations from the superintendent and Mr. Pound. Go out the front door, he said, and re-enter the first door to the north. Go to the 2nd floor, and somebody will let you in. I'll call over to let them know you are coming. The north wing was as old as the middle section, but it was shabbier. The stairway up to the 2nd floor, curved both at the bottom and the top, was just large enough for one person to pass through. On that stair, I felt shut in. It was dirty, littered with papers and bits of bread. The treads were metal. The walls were old and scratched and broken. And like all institutions, they were painted sour cream yellow. Through the most recent coating, I could see wainscoting. At the steep top, I found a door closed, fastened with a great padlock. But before I could rattle it, I heard voices coming from the 3rd floor, Walnut Ward. Soon, 2 large black men appeared. Laughing, they let me pass. Then they locked the door behind me. Chestnut Ward consisted of another wide, dark corridor. Off this one were cubicles, each one containing a bed. The corridor itself was fitted up as a kind of lounge, with wooden benches, some wooden chairs, a rocker or 2, a few tables, and in the southeast corner, a television set. It was drab, without color, and with little light, and everything seemed worn and old. The floor was covered with ubiquitous linoleum. The walls were tan, the window uncovered and barred, the room dreary. And worst of all, pervading everywhere, penetrating like fog, was the smell of mental hospitals. I had never been in a place like this before, but I recognized the odor. It combines the smells of unwashed mops, slowly drying floors, damp, unaired bathrooms, formaldehyde, and bodies. Not dirty bodies, but bodies that are too close to one another. Bodies whose abnormal glands secrete abnormal quantities of abnormal discharges. The smell was not stale, just permanent. And the inhabitants of this corridor must have found it part of themselves. I'm a professor and a researcher from Cape Town, South Africa. And I've come to tell you a story that unfolded in the front room of the main building of the Academy of Sciences in Vienna, Austria. This is a story of the theft of bodies from their graves in the Northern Cape in South Africa at the beginning of the 20th century. A theft that occurred under the instruction of the first professor of anthropology in Austria. This was a theft that involved mostly the boiling down of dead bodies to bone on the spot, except in the case of Klaas and Troy Pienaar from Pienaar's Pits near Cologne in the Northern Cape, whose bodies were stuffed in a barrel of salt, placed on an ox wagon, and transferred by rail to Cape Town and then by ship to Europe, where they were taken up by the cultural institutions of Vienna in Austria, where they were subjected to the routines and the methodologies of racial science and turned into objects in the collection of the Natural History Museum. But I also want to tell you a story of the process of rehumanization, the process of turning museum objects into people, and yes, dead people into citizens of a democracy. Because this is what unfolded during 2012 in the Natural History Museum and in the Austrian Academy of Sciences in Vienna, where a team from South Africa, after conducting negotiations and consultations with local communities, negotiated with the authorities in the museum system and with members of the Austrian government for the return of the remains of Klaas and Troy Pienaar, whose biographies are known, whose names are known, and who the South Africans insisted needed to be returned as people. The Austrians replied that that was not possible, because it was not possible under European law for human remains in a museum collection to be returned as human. They had to be returned in their boxes as objects. And the South Africans insisted that the events that would unfold would be ceremonial, they would be funereal, and that Klaas and Troy Pienaar would be returned in coffins. And the first ceremony that took place in the front room of the building of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, you see on the film before you now. This is a film of the welcoming ceremony conducted by Petrus Falway from the Northern Cape, who is introducing the delegation and himself to Klaas and Troy Pienaar, who are in those boxes located on the table behind him. And the irony of the ceremony is that it took place in front of this painting, the painting of the intellectual history of science in Austria. And after he introduced Klaas and Troy Pienaar to the delegation, he told them that we had come to take them home, that they would be flown back to South Africa on an aeroplane, unlike the journey that they had taken 100 years before, where they had traveled on a ship across the oceans. This was the first stage in the ceremonies that unfolded in Vienna, in Johannesburg, and then in Kuruman, South Africa, through which the rehumanization and the reburial of class and Troy Pinar took place.
They are opening something because suddenly, we already spoke quite often about this situation of human remains, and also this kind of violence in the objectivation which they had. Also, a body became a skull with the name of the collector and a number instead of a name. That is then a answer is objectivation to make an object, and that's also why this turning point, this rehumanization or this resubjectivation to give back a name, etc., is so important because it also changes the view of the history on the skull. It changes the history, and it has also reflection on scientific work itself of the 19th century. So that is something which I found quite interesting. And for the moment, where this, I don't know, it's also funny once when I was working in a campaign, a lot of people on the normal campaign, they were describing that they hate museums. I love all the time museums. I like museums. But with the existence of the human remains so close to the other objects, the other objects became even more dead for me, other objects, because it even gets clear that they are out of their function, out of their society, out of that what they could be or what they had been before.
essential part of the thing, so a cause effect, but it's become its own cause effect, but it's become like the occupation of the same, also becomes an excuse.
Okay.
The same, also, you know, and to try to distinguish, you know, those things. Well, what is my occupier responsible for? You know, my occupier for, you know, let's say the lack of waste disposal in the district. But you know, the administration, for example, is not responsible for me throwing a piece of meat. Responsible for me. That is a frustration that is partly due to some variation that is you're unconscious of the effort of actually tossing it, you know. But it becomes one mix of one bag, you know, one size fits all, just toss it on like, you know, one side, but this is the cause for everything. I mean, yes, gradation of societal and personal life. I think societal, as opposed to other societies, we've done pretty well, and exceptional societies, we've done pretty little. Homelessness, you know, the people, you know, homelessness, it's really intense because their homes are destroyed, or people in the Jordan Valley and their homes are destroyed, as well as not allowed to develop their housing, or the negative weaknesses, but their housing, or literally within the towns, within the cities and the villages. There is no necessity in the neglect of another human being to that degree, but still another human being to that degree. Trash, or contractor that's paving a street in Jerusalem, and it's paving a street in Jerusalem. But somehow they do a much better job. You know, are they behaving better on pagan bus? Local bus.
Am I my body?
Are you your body?
What is the body?
Is the body the outer edge of the internal spirit?
When we say embodiment, are we embodying the soul of who we are, or the fact that we have hands?
Or the fact that these hands are mine?
I wonder if that object that I live in is only there so I know that this is me.
If someone slaps me on my face, which is slapping me on the body, it hurts. But it hurts more what's happening in the relationship.
If someone makes love to me, there's the bodily experience of it. But there's something about love that I feel, that I wonder if this is my body that I feel, or if it is my body that is feeling it.
My body contains experience, but I'm not experience. Am I excluding my own body by that?
Can I overcome my bodily experience?
If I shut up long enough, will I be able to really shut up?
When I move, to what do I really reach out physically?
Is there an inner part of my body self which is untouchable?
Can I think of the other when I think the other is a body?
Is my body the container of my suffering, or is it the suffering itself?
As my body grows old, does it exclude me from my history, my childhood, my adolescence?
Is my body then a premium excluder?
What do I see when I look at you?
What do I see when I look at your body?
What does my body do when I look at you?
What does my body potentially could mean to you?
Can my body relate to my dog?
How can it be that other bodies cause immediately shape in my body?
If I would go blind, would I still be able to experience you?
What about the dead bodies and those of former generations?
And those which are incorporated in our bodies?
And is this incorporation a form of body inclusion?
Why is it that when I have an itch and I scratch, that the itch moves all around?
Does my body need a social surrounding, the embeddedness in the collective, or who the fucks need it?
Is my body here just to eat and shit?
Is it a transformer?
Is it a transformation machine?
A metabolic energized transformation machine.
Why is it that we spend so much time wondering about our bodies?
Why is it that we spend so much time wondering about other bodies, or the bodies of others?
If I could not use my body, would you still want me?
If you could not use my body, would you still want me?
If you could not use your body, Would you still want me?
If your body falls apart, do I feel dandy about you?
Do I get caught up in fear, losing control of my body?
How do we know that our connection is not a one-way street?
Can I rehumanize my body?
Do I want to rehumanize my body when humanizing is so fucked up?
As my body is determined to die, does this imply that death always plays a role between me and other bodies?
Because of death being a destructive act in my body, does it imply that destructive acts always happening between me and others?
If my body wants to hold on, does it mean that I hold on?
Do I lose the sensibility of touching when I touch more often and often and often?
Do I lose the sense of uniqueness of bodies meeting when I meet a lot of bodies?
How much imprints of other bodies can my body take in a lifetime?
Is my body a library for the many imprints of my life?
Do I hate your body because of your imprints?
Do I not understand your body because of your imprints?
Am I afraid of your body because your imprints bring up an imprint which I do not want to see?
How do I ask you to love me for my imprints?
Is my physical behavior based on my imprints, and can I become more than just my physical behavior?
When I become more of my physical behavior, do I have to let go of my sensations and feelings?
Is my inner body a reflection of the constant interplay between victims and perpetrators?
Is my inner body a reflection of an outside battlefield?
We know by now what can we do to our body, to others' body. It can be nice and gentle, but also cruel and violent. So who decides what to do? My body and your body. I think we have to decide it ourselves, not them. As we can explore our fantasy and imagination, so we should not stuck to make a body as our target. Explore your fantasy and your imagination. What can we do with our body or others' body? Can you read it here? You can do anything you like. You can take it home if you want to. Explore your imagination and fantasy.
welcome to stay and explore Mother Clay and whatever you would like to explore with your body. And as I said, hands faster. 7, sorry, not
Sorry.
7. 7 downstairs in room 18.
Yes, room 18, where we had the symposium. For those of you that didn't have the symposium, it's right down at the bottom floor, and you see the main entrance and the little place where the Hausmeister is, just in that glass door section there. It's labeled.